In today's video, we're going to talk about the top 8 things that I hate the most about living in Newport News, Virginia, and we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Sansalone, and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area, anywhere from Virginia Beach all the way up towards past Williamsburg, and I do videos every week about living and moving to this area, including Newport News. And I help people from all over the world move to this area. It's what I do. So if you have any questions about living here or moving here, please let me know. I have my contact information in the description. You can reach out to me at any point, email, call, or text, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. So today's video, we're going to be talking all about the 8 things that I do not like and hate the most about living in Newport News. So number 1 is the traffic problem. And you probably have heard a lot of different things about traffic in the Hampton Roads general area. There are tunnels that connect from one side of the area to the other. There is just random traffic that happens all over the place. But specifically in Newport News, look on the map, you'll see where Newport News is. It's like that long strip on the western side of the peninsula, what's considered the peninsula of the southeastern part of Virginia. And on this side, you've got a couple primary roads besides the interstate itself, Interstate 64. You've got Warwick Boulevard and you have Jefferson Avenue. And those two are almost parallel from the north into the south parts of the city. And these are long highways, they're not interstates, but they have lots of lights that intermittently are placed and create lots of starts and stops and starts and stops. But this is such a long road that most people in the Newport News area travel up and down. It creates lots of congestion in this area. That's fine. It's helpful to have two parallel streets actually, but getting from there over to the interstate itself, because it's such a long road and because there's so many roads that come off of the main roads, it can take you a little bit of time, more than you might expect, to get to the interstate. Now, that's all fine and good, but the biggest problem about the traffic is the interstate itself, Interstate 64. So I mentioned the tunnels. If you are commuting from closer to the edge of the peninsula or over to the south side, you have to cross or interact with this tunnel, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel or the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel, both connecting towards the south side. And these can not only congest, but back up for half an hour plus a lot of times, because these are the two primary ways to get across to the other side of the Hampton Roads area. So the backups can go several exits beyond the tunnel. So you trying to get onto the interstate from any of these exits, or if you're on the interstate trying to get across the tunnel period, can be surprisingly long depending on what time of the day you go. And part of this is there's a mystery because you don't really know when the backups are going to happen. And so you might think that the map says it's going to take me 35 minutes to get to my destination. Next thing you know, you get on the interstate and it's going to take you 55 minutes or longer, especially if they close the tunnel for some reason. So if you want to live in Newport News and commute to Langley Air Force Base, for example, or to NASA, or up to Fort Eustis in the north part of Newport News, make sure you check how long it's going to take you to get to work, for example, or talk to some neighbors to see how bad the traffic really can get from the area that you're looking to move to, because it really can make a difference and influence your lifestyle. So the next is the often discussed and often ridiculed concept here, which is crime. Crime is, I think, a little bit of a misunderstood concept in this city, because people talk about, like, there's a nickname for Newport News called bad news. And that's often because there's a perception of there being a lot of high crime in Newport News. So if you ask, for example, coworkers about where you think good places to live would be, they might suggest, hey, don't go to Newport News, it's a really rough city. Well, the reality is that Newport News has so many different parts to the city, and I would say that the loudest stereotype for Newport News is that there are certain parts of the city that have more condensed crime, and it creates a reputation for the entire city. So when you say Newport News, people relate Newport News to crime, and then it blankets the whole city. I think that is a very inaccurate statement, but it just frustrates me because there are sections that do have high crime. It does make the city's reputation a bit more negative. Now, if you look on the Trulia's crime map, or any place you want to do some research for crime, you'll notice that there are specific differences between one side of the city and the other. I strongly suggest you to do some research on crime if you do want to move to Newport News, just if not for anything, for your own understanding, and so you can feel good about what you're doing, so you won't feel like you're walking into some big problem that you didn't expect. Now next is, it's kind of boring. If you don't like nature, you're going to run into some issues with things to do. So, for example, there aren't too many larger arenas around here. Hampton has one, Hampton Coliseum. Coliseum that has some, you know, bands, performing artists, things like that that do come into that area. But Newport News doesn't have that except for one, the Ferguson Center of Performing Arts, which is in the Christopher Newport campus. That has also performing artists as well as other arts here. That's one, but other than that, not a whole lot. So nature, there are some good nature options. The Newport News City Park is nice in the northern section, as well as other parks on the western side, and the Living Museum and the Mariners Museum, which is also in Newport News. Some really nice museums on the western side, which this whole section on the west side I love. So it's not that you've got nothing to do, but if you're not into nature, you're not into specific museums kind of thing, you might find yourself even going down to Norfolk, into like the downtown area of Norfolk as well, to find more nightlife, for example, or sports. There's a section in the center called City Center near Oyster Point that, you know, it's trying to become a little bit of a downtown. Some restaurants, for example, but it's just not super built up right now. But for what it is, it's not bad. Now the next one is, if you have friends on the south side, for example, in Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and Norfolk, you might not see them very much. If at all. So I found the people that I know that live on the peninsula and then have friends on the south side, or vice versa. You don't see too much of each other. The reason is because there is a perception that it takes a long time to get to somebody's house from one side or the other. And it's true. Crossing that tunnel, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel specifically, can really be a challenge and super frustrating. So if you live in Newport News and you have friends in Norfolk or even Chesapeake or Virginia Beach, expect to see them a lot less in general. The reality is that, you know, it's a little bit the mental idea of trying to make that leap to go an hour plus sometimes to get to see your friends across the area just doesn't equate to something that's easy to do on a regular basis. Now next is that downtown southwestern section of Newport News. It's really run down, and I'm just not a big fan. So if you go down the southwestern corner near the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel and downtown itself and the courthouses, you'll see lots more commercial areas, industrial areas, the Newport News shipbuilding areas down there as well, and so it feels like a totally different city from the rest of Newport News. I love the western side of Newport News, close to the water especially, but going down to this section, this has a lot more older houses. You know, the areas and streets aren't kept up as well, and it's just a total night and day compared to even going a couple miles north up into the western side of Newport News. So that leads me to the next one, which is that much of the city has not been renovated in a long time. There are a few spots that have some newer elements. For example, like near Christopher Newport University, near Oyster Point, there are some spots that have newer restaurants, newer like shops, the downtown, that city center area also. But that southwestern section, even in the central and the northern sections, it has lots of older strip malls, older stores. So if you go up Warwick Boulevard and Jefferson Avenue, you'll see a lot of places that have a lot of older things, older mom and pop places, which is not bad, but you can just feel that it kind of needs a facelift in a sense. There are parts that are, to me, I like a lot though. Oyster Point, where that city center area is, as well as on Jefferson Avenue near the airport that has lots of newer stuff. For example, there's a Whole Foods and Trader Joe's up in that area. Lots of other big box stores too. Even the Patrick Henry Mall, it's just older, but you know, most malls are kind of struggling right now, so it doesn't feel as fresh as it used to. So a lot of the areas here just have that older style that just kind of needs a facelift. Next is the lower ranked schools. So you talk to people here that might recommend places to go because of schools. They might say, hey, don't go to Newport News because of school districts. Well, if you look on niche.com and other school ranking systems, you might see a lot of these schools are ranked lower, and I really hesitate to give opinions based solely on school rankings. It really depends on the school, so I would definitely talk to some neighbors, do some research on that. But in general, this is one thing that people do talk about a lot, and they often go to other cities because these schools are ranked relatively low to other parts of the Hampton Roads area. Now, number 8 is the lack of local coffee shops in Newport News. I noticed this a little while back that there aren't too many except Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. Well, I'd say Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts have taken over lots of cities, but you know, I love seeing those smaller coffee shops because they have a different vibe to them. Each one's different. There are only a couple, Grounded Coffee and Canvas Coffee, in the city that I know of that are those local coffee shops that are fun to go to outside of the chains. And so if you like that local feel, that local coffee shop vibe, you're gonna have a harder time finding lots of them in Newport News. You might might find yourself going elsewhere to get that fixed. Now, do these things make you feel like this is not a city you want to live in? Well, some people say yes, some people say no, but if you do plan on living in Newport News or the areas around here, let me know. You can reach out to me at any point. I've got my contact information in the description, and I can help you relocate here whenever you need to, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And if you want to watch more videos about this area, you can click here to watch more and subscribe to my channel. I do videos every week about living in this area, and I will see you on the next video.